All right, welcome back, everyone. It is the morning lecture now for week 2, day 1. So last Friday, we had a lecture with Narciso, and in this morning lecture, he talked about the document object model, talked about objects and how objects are saved in the key value pair, and how when we look at our HTML from our inspect tool. So for example, this inspect tool on this page here, we are able to access the the documents object model and see the values of this giant object created through HTML. What we're going to be doing now is accessing these objects' values and manipulating them in JavaScript. Okay, so I'm going to be teaching from this part of the platform, okay, starting with click event. Before I do that, I'm going to give a bit of an introduction with the slide, and this is going to review the stuff that you covered last Friday. All right, last Friday morning's lecture with Narciso. I'm going to re-review and retouch up on some stuff that he went into elaborate detail on about objects and the HTML document object model, okay? And then we're going to learn how to connect the JavaScript that we've learned to build and being able to use JavaScript to make our page come alive, all right? We've been able to style it. We've been able to create the HTML, the foundation, the structure, the backbone of our page. We're able to move divs around the page using Flex and CSS. Okay, so now we're going to use JavaScript. Okay, and so I'm going to re-review some of the stuff that Narciso touched up on and elaborate. And then this afternoon, we're going to have a demo session where we're going to be putting into practice what we learned this morning. And then so tomorrow, we would have finished everything that we would have taught you that's necessary for the test for web fundamentals. Tomorrow, we're going to start just reviewing everything we've done for our exam on Wednesday, okay? Our exam on Wednesday is our big day. This is what we're prepping for. So this lesson is key to passing our exam on Wednesday. All right, so let me just show you how important it is. If I skip on ahead to the yellow belt now, if I go to the yellow belt part and I click the test criteria, you can see now what you'll be weighted on for your test, okay? Each weight for each score is what I'm going to be grading you by on your test on Wednesday. And if you skip all the way down to the bottom, you'll see that there's going to be 3 JavaScript features that we're going to ask you to implement on your test. So tomorrow I'm going to do a test review. So you'll see in practicality what this means, all right? But what I'm telling you it means now is that you're going to need to implement 3 JavaScript features. We don't know what they are. We're going to learn all of them today. And the total weight for all 3 is going to be 2.5. So that means if you get a perfect score on HTML and CSS, but don't touch JavaScript at all, the best score you can get is a 7.5 without touching JavaScript. So you need at least 1 JavaScript feature to pass to get you over that 8 threshold to pass the test, okay? So we need to have at least 1 JavaScript feature implemented. So we definitely need to apply our focus to this lecture and tomorrow going forward, and how to make JavaScript a JavaScript feature for our web page, okay? Because we need to at least implement 1 in order to pass the test. That's assuming we get a perfect score on HTML and CSS. Now, we'll go over this more in detail in the future. We won't need to analyze this as much. I just want to emphasize you need at least 3 JavaScript features. We are going to go over what those are this morning, okay? So let's do a brief introduction into JavaScript and the DOM, and then we'll go ahead and learn these JavaScript features that we are telling you you need to implement. Okay, so let's look at the slide here. I made a slide for us. So JavaScript, connecting it to the DOM. So far we've learned about JavaScript as a language. Now we're going to be using that language that we've learned and applying it to the DOM. All right, and who can tell me what DOM stands for? You can unmute and say it out loud. Come on.
Document object model.
There we go. Document object model. Yes. So we're going to be treating the HTML as an object, and we're going to be using JavaScript to affect the DOM. Okay, so we're going to be referring to that object that our HTML creates as the DOM from now on. Okay, we're going to be talking about manipulating the DOM, connecting the JavaScript. So the first thing I want us to be reminded of is how to connect JavaScript to our HTML. Okay, so how to connect. At the bottom of the HTML body, we're going to add this script tag. So let's just do that now. Let's just cut through our slide and show how this works. So here I have an HTML file. Let's create the boilerplate. Let's say hello world, h1, hello world. All right, now that I've created my h1, I've wrote a hello world. Let's see this in the live server just so I know that this is working. Okay, so I have that. Now let's just create a CSS file out of habit so that we always do that. So style.css, let's just connect our CSS file. And we want to link our CSS. So we say link :CSS, and it's able to access my CSS file because it has the same file name, style.css, style.css. Okay, so now let's bring it over to the right. So I'm going to click this book button on the top right. Now it's on the right-hand side. Let's affect the H1 by coloring it red. So I'll say H1 color red. Let's see this reflected. There we are. So after I save and refresh my web browser, save my code and refresh my web browser, I'm able to see that change reflected. So I've so far just connected my HTML and CSS. We've been doing this for a couple days now, so this is pretty standard to us so far. Now we want to connect the JavaScript. So what did the slide say? At the bottom of the HTML body, we want to write this link here. So let's go ahead and create that at the bottom of the body. So that means we want to be in this area right here, okay? At the bottom of the body means right below the body, right above the bottom's, right above the body's closing tag, okay? So right above the body's closing tag. Okay, so there's where we want to put it. And in order to write this, I'm going to teach you guys a shortcut. We're just going to type in script, because that's what we're going to name our JavaScript file. So actually, before we link it, let's create that JavaScript file. So before we link it, let's create it. We want to create it in the same folder. So I'm here in my morning lecture folder. I want to say script.js. Okay, there we are. So here's our script.js. I'll bring it to the right-hand side, and I'm going to type in the link. So script, and I want to select this one here, script:/src. So now that I've selected it, it's written for me. It's almost done. We see here the only thing that's missing now is the file name itself. So we need to give access by the file name. Now, a way that we can be sure that we're accessing our file name correctly, that we're typing in it correctly, because we know that if we type in a typo or something like that, it's very sensitive to spelling or casing. So we're going to do // so that we can see the files that are available at this file location, and then say script.js, click this one. Okay, now we should have linked our script.js to our HTML. Now it's properly connected. Before we continue on, though, I want to ask us, why do you think we link it at the bottom of the body? What's a guess for that reason? The reason we do that is because we want the HTML to have finished loading before we read our JavaScript. So we want our HTML page to be fully read and understood before our JavaScript touches or manipulates anything. Okay, so we want to start with the base HTML before JavaScript starts to go in there and change things up. Okay, so let's go ahead and test our connection now. We know that we've created our script as our link here, so let's test our connection. So what we're going to do is console log something. So we're going to say console.log hello world. Okay, so simple console log in our script.js. We want to see this printed somewhere, right? Because console log is going to print to that special screen area we said was going to be there for developers. So let's see this printed. So let's look at our page, and I'm going to right click, inspect the page. And if I inspect and go to console, I should be able to see what I've logged right there. If I'm able to see that console log, I know I have created that connection, and it is there. It's properly connected. Okay, so that's what Narciso has shown us on Friday morning. I'm wanting to re-emphasize it so that we know how to connect our JavaScript file to our HTML and CSS. So let's run a poll so that we can so I can understand how well we're understanding how to connect our JavaScript file to our HTML file now, and that we can see that connection in the console if we inspect and see that hello world there. Right. Okay. So, all right. So now we've created that JavaScript connection. It's connected through that script tag at the bottom of our HTML. Does anyone have any questions about this before we move on? Anyone not understanding what I can explain a bit better, even if you feel like it's a dumb or redundant question? What we want to do now is ask before we move on so that we can get a grasp and make sure that we're all on the same page.
I might be a bit ahead of myself, but would there ever be a situation where you link, I'm assuming there'd be a situation where you link multiple JS files?
Right, there might be a situation where we do that.
Does the order matter at all, or?
We'll give a specific example to that type of situation on Friday this week after you pass the test.
All right, sorry. Okay.
No, it's okay. It's a good question to ask. We may have multiple JavaScript files, and that can either be through dividing the JavaScript into different files for different functionality purposes, or for other reasons, and we'll get into that reason on Friday.
And sorry, just another question I just thought of. This I don't know, but I feel like you would only ever have one CSS file, or is that not the case?
For now, for this week, yes.
Okay.
We're only going to have one HTML, one JavaScript, and one CSS file per folder per project.
Okay.
Okay. So only one HTML, one JavaScript, and one CSS. We link the CSS through the head. All right. So we know how we can link the CSS through the link tag in the head. All we've done now is link the JavaScript through the script tag, and that goes at the bottom of the body tag. Okay. That's the only difference we've found so far. The script tag, we find it through our script.js file location that we put in the SRC. The script tag we get at the bottom of our HTML body. The way we link it is by saying script : :src and then / the file name / script.js. Test that connection using hello world. We see our page, we inspect, right? So this today, we're going to start to use, if we haven't started already, our inspect tool. So that we use by going to our display of our page, right click, click inspect. We see here's our doc. We can move it to the right-hand side or to the bottom by clicking the 3 dots at the top right. We can move the doc to the bottom that way. We can move the doc to the right. And so now that we have our doc, we want to click on the console tab, right? So this elements here gives us our HTML page that we've created. So this is our DOM, right? Now we want to click the console here to see whatever we want printed in the console. So hello world or console log, something else, console.log, high class. Okay, so let's see that. And there it is, high class, right here, printed in the console. So we can now print stuff in our console through connecting our JavaScript and then writing console log on our script.js file. Okay, so that's what we have so far. Now we want to do something. Now that we're connected, how can we use this connection? How can we take advantage of this connection to affect our JavaScript? Okay, let's continue on with our slide. We know this is how we connect our script.js, script.js file. All right, let's look at the keyword this. Keyword this. What is this? I saw in the lecture that Narciso covered what this is, the keyword this is. All right, so when I'm saying this in this context in this lecture, I'm referring to the keyword. All right, and so the keyword is the word this. Okay, so it might sound funny to say this over and over again, but know that I'm referring to the keyword. And whenever I use it in the English language, even whenever I'm using it in the English language, for example, if I say this slide, what am I referring to? Our current context, what we're looking at now. When I'm saying this, I'm referring to where we're looking at this current moment. So when I say this slide in English, I'm saying the one that we're currently looking at, this overall slide. So even in English, it's easy to understand how this is used. If I say, for example, this cup, right? This cup, when I'm saying this, I'm referring to the one currently at hand, the one in my hand, in the context that we're talking about. So this is going to act as an anchor to the thing that we're attaching it to bring it into context. Okay, so from now on, this will refer to the object, the HTML tag it is connected to. So not actually the element, should say element. So let me correct that. But an element gets turned into an object, right? Because the object becomes the part of the document object model. So so whatever the HTML tag it is connected to is what this is going to be referring to. So we're going to create some HTML elements, some tags with the keyword this attached to it to see what we mean. Okay, so we can console log this once we have it attached, or we can receive this. We can change this. So let's see what I mean by this. Let's see what I mean by this. All right, sorry, I did it already. Here it is, H1 hello world. Okay, we want to connect something here so that I can see this console log. So I want to attach the keyword this to this H1. So how can we do that? In order to do that, I have to create something else here. I have to create something else. So let's look into the next slide to see how I can connect the keyword this so I can use it as an anchor to console log it in our JavaScript. We need to learn about JavaScript events. JavaScript events. So what do I mean by events? Well, when we go onto a page, all right, when we go onto a web page, there's several ways that we will be able to interact with the components or the elements on the page, right? If we click a button on the page, we can make that button, we can attach an event so that when it's clicked, the button will do something, right? So far, we've created buttons, but they don't do anything. They're just there. They look like buttons. You just click them. They go up and down. They don't have any functionality. The way we're going to attach functionality to it is by assigning this event here on click to the button, so that when the button is clicked, on the click, it does this. All right, so we're going to attach this event name on click to a function, right? This function is going to be written in the JavaScript file. Okay, this is going to be in the JavaScript file, and these events on mouse over. So like, let's say I mouse over a, so let's create an HTML document here. So we have an H1 and it says, hello world. We can make it so that when we hover over this one on mouse over, we can do something. Or when we are mousing out of it, all right, so if our mouse is already hovered over it and we mouse out of that area that our H1 is occupying, we can make it do something on mouse out. So on mouse out, we can change it, make it do something. We can make it so that when our, like, let's say we have an HTML file that receives an input, right? We have that input square. It's waiting for us to enter something. So like, let's say we type something in here, hello. We can make it so that on changing this input, on each change, that we do something. Okay, or on the input itself, on changing this input, we do something. So we can make our page interactive now on clicks, on mouse overs, on mouse outs, on changes, on inputs. Okay, this is just to name a few, but different ways that we can interact with our page, we can now do things. What we want to do now, okay, is just work with this on click, okay? Just this on click. I'm going to make an on click event to do something. So when I click it, it's going to do something. What I want it to do is to console log, okay? So we're going to do this, console log. All right, so we're going to console log whatever we attach our on click to. So let's do that now, right? Let's stop the slide for just a second to see what I mean by this. So I have here my H1, I'm going to type in the opening tag on click. On click equals quotations. So here now I have an event listener on my page. So it's waiting now for me to click this H1. And I haven't said to do anything once you click it. It's waiting for a command. All right. It's waiting for a command. But right now, there's now an event listener attached to my H1 that's waiting for me to create a function to make it do something. So let's make that function. Let's create a JavaScript function. Okay, function. And this function is going to be just to say hello. Okay, we're just going to make a function to say hello. And right now we're going to say console.log hello. So let's create a function now. So I've just created it. I've called it say hello, right? We know that this function is not going to run itself. Remember how we've said from the beginning that a JavaScript function, even though we write it, it's going to parse through it. It's going to acknowledge it's there, but it's not going to do something until we call the name. right? So how do we call the name of this function to make it actually run? We have to say hello, right? We have to call its name in order to see that function actually do something. Okay, remember, this is the invocation. So let's go ahead and see. I have everything saved right now. I'm going to switch over to this page. And if I refresh, you can see in the console, there's nothing printed, right? I'm looking in this area right here. There's nothing printed there, right? It's empty, completely empty. I haven't made it do anything yet. Let's just make our function call within the JavaScript here. I'm going to say hello. I'm calling my function name. All right, so this is the function call. This is the invocation. So what this does is say, start the process. Start the process so that it starts this function and console logs hello. So now that I've written this function call, right, within my JavaScript, we should see that. And there it is. Here's my hello. Here is my hello. Okay. Before I continue, I know this is like stuff we've already done plenty of times, but we're about to upgrade and improve the way we use JavaScript right now. Okay. So before I move forward, do we understand that a function is not going to run unless we write the invocation for it, right? Function is not going to run unless we write the invocation for it. Do we understand that this works this way? Just because the function is defined doesn't mean it's going to be ran. It's only going to run when we click the say hello. Okay, I see we have some good numbers on the pulse check here, so I feel pretty confident to continue. All I'm going to do now is move this, now that this is connected, right? Because this is connected through this connection. It's now connected. My JavaScript's connected to my HTML. So all I'm going to do now is take this and move it straight into here, so that it's not called the moment the page is read, but the moment that this thing is clicked. So now this function should only run when this is clicked. So I'm taking this here and I'm just going to move it to this area here. All right, so let's do that. I'm going to go ahead and extract it, Control X or Command X because I'm on a Mac, and then paste it right there where I said. Okay. So now let's go back to my page. Let's go back to my page. Now it's back to being empty, right? And that's because we moved it out of the JavaScript. We moved it out. We made it to be in a controlled setting. Now it's going to be only on the on click will this function be called. So let's go ahead and click our H1 now. I'm going to click it. And what do I see? The moment that I clicked it, it console logs hello. Did you guys see that? I'm going to click it again. Now we see a number 2. Yeah, it's because we have 2 identical console logs. Hello 2. If I click it again, 3, 4, 5, 6. So now I can make this console log every time I click this H1. Okay, let's start over. Let me refresh. No console logs. I invoke the function on the click. So I click and there it is. I can make now my HTML page interactive. The moment that I click this here, I'm able to see the function do the console log to do something. Okay, so I'm clicking here, I'm increasing the amount of console logs I'm seeing. So let's take a pulse check. How well do we understand what I'm doing now? Do you see what I'm doing? I'm just now invoking the function through calling this function and attaching the function invocation to an event listener, which is on click. So it's listening for this event, which is me clicking the page, and then it does something the moment I click. Okay, so I see now we're this is maybe something new that we're seeing here. So let's take a moment to ask any questions that we may have. Any questions we feel like we have right now? Okay. If we don't know what to ask yet, all right, we can always reference this code from the GitHub, from our lecture. We can always revisit this. But in order to fully grasp this, you need to do it yourself, right? You can't just watch me do it. You need to create a JavaScript file and connect it yourself, link it through the script tag, and then create this event listener, which is waiting for me to click the H1. And the moment that I click it, it's saying, now run the function, do this functionality. So every time I click this here, it's running this function. All right, now I said we were going to learn about the keyword this. So let's write it in. Let's just put in the word this here. This. I wrote it in now. Okay. I'm going to pass it in here. This is my placeholder. Remember, this is our right here is where we're going to write something that's going to be receiving this. So this is our function call. It's going to be passed in here. So we want something to be able to receive this. So we're just going to say element, because we don't know what's being passed in. All right. It could be an H1 that we click. It could be some other part, maybe a button. This can be different depending on what it's attached to. Right now, this word, this keyword, this is acting as an anchor to the H1 that it's attached to. So then I'm passing it to the element. So let's console log the element instead of hello world. And we'll see now when we click this H1, what should we expect to see in our console here? Now that I've attached the keyword this, what should we expect to see in our console log? Now that I've attached the keyword this and say, receive this and console log this, right? This element is just the placeholder to receive this. So what should we expect to see? Any guesses?
Would it be hello world?
Well, good guess, but where yeah, that would be hello world because it's in this H1, but let's see. I'm just going to click it now. It's the hello world within the H1. So it's returning the H1 element itself. So it's returning the whole entire thing that I had just attached it to. That's why I mean that it's an anchor. It's an anchor. This is just like a hook, right? It's fishing. It's grabbed this thing and it's pulled this whole entire element and placed it into this placeholder so that when we console log it, we're grabbing this. So imagine this is like a fish hook, right? So this word is like a hook on a fishing pole that's grabbing this whole entire fish here. So let's say that this is a fish. It's a long fish. And then it's pulling it into this element so that we can view what it is. Then we can console log it. Okay. So think of this as like this word as a fishing hook that we can attach, and whatever we hook it to, it's going to bring that whole thing with it. So let's do another pulse check. How well do we understand the keyword this and how it works as an anchor? Okay, we're going to do more review. I'm just introducing it at this point. Okay, we're going to go a little bit longer with this lecture because it's important that we do this lecture today. Okay, so we have keyword this, we have different events. We're going to go over each event. Okay, if we don't do all of them this morning, we'll definitely cover them again this afternoon. We're going to go over all the different events: on click, on mouse over, on mouse out, on change, on input. All right, so we have the keyword this, we have events. We have another way of accessing the elements in our DOM. Another way of accessing the elements in our DOM besides this, and it's through using what's called the query selector. The query selector. All right. So the way that we can use the query selector for now, we're going to make a variable and then connect our HTML element through our query selector. We're going to connect it to this variable, and then we're going to access that variable through that variable's access to the DOM through the query selector. Okay, watch out for duplicates, as it says here. We'll see what that means. And then once we access our elements, we're going to want to change them or do something with it. So we're going to do that by saying .inner text to change the element's text. Remember how Narciso showed you how the objects in the DOM have different properties, inner text, and different values. So we're going to be able to change those values now that we are able to access that object. Okay, we're going to be able to create a variable, connect it through that variable, and then change it. I won't do a demo for this yet until we get to that part in the lecture. So we know that it's there. Okay, so we know that a query selector is another way to access elements in our DOM besides this, right? It's through the query selector. Right, so we're going to have to get used to what that name is and what it does. Query selector. All right, and one last thing we'll introduce today, which is callback functions. What are callback functions? A callback function is a function passed into another function as an argument. So a callback function is a function that's a function passed into another function as an argument, which is then invoked inside the outer function to complete some kind of routine or action. Okay, so a set timeout is a callback function. And it's going to call the function after the amount of time provided. So here we have an example of set timeout here. And it's going to call this function. Do you see message? It's not going to call it with the parentheses. In this case, this callback function, you just need to invoke the name message. So we have this function here. It's accessing this one. And then 3000 is the number of milliseconds the function is going to run after we reach this line of code. So as soon as we reach this line of code, it says, now run this function in 3 seconds from now. So you're setting a time here. So a callback function is a function that calls another function. Let's see this quick use of this, all right? And then we'll come back to this at the end of the lecture if we have time. Right, so let's look at this callback function real quick. I'm going to write in here the code that I see available function message. Let's write that in. Function message. And so I'm going to say console.log delayed message. And then I'm going to say console log start. And then set timeout. This is going to be my callback function here. Set timeout. And here I'm going to write in the message. This is the name of the function and the amount of milliseconds it's going to wait until it starts. So I'm going to put 5,000, so that's 5 milliseconds. And then I'm going to say console.log end. All right, so let's run this function. Let's comment this out. Let's just run it here. I'm going to say, let's clear this. Okay. All right, so we have start and end console logged, and then the delayed message. Did you see how delayed message came after end? So we had start invoked. All right, so it acknowledged this function. It didn't do anything with it. It read this line, console log start. It did that right away. Here we have that. And then it read this line. All right, it went straight to line 11. And it said, okay, you have a set timeout function. You want me to call this function message after 5 seconds. Okay, I can do that. It starts the process. And then it moves on to this line, which is end. Okay, so this process has started, even though we don't see anything for it yet. So it should see start and then end. And then after 5 seconds, we should see the line completed here. So let's see that again. I'm going to just clear here. And then here we go. We see start and end right away. After 5 seconds, we should see our delayed message. All right, so let's just take a quick poll. I know this is a new type of function. How well do we understand so far callback functions and how we can use the set timeout as a type of callback function to delay the function call by that many seconds? Okay, we're going to have more practice with this as well. Okay, I just wanted to introduce this topic before we get too in depth with it. All right, so this is just an introduction, not a definitive lesson on it yet. All right, so now that I've introduced callback functions, let's look at the platform. Okay, we're going to go through each event listener, each type of way to access the DOM through the keyword this and through the query selectors. Okay, so let's look at the event. All right, we know that we can access we can make any element in our page have an event listener. So that is an event is something, an interaction with the DOM, either through a click, through a hover, through a timeout, something that interacts with the page. In this case, we're starting with a click. So we have a way to say on click, and here we have what we see here is an alert. It's an alert. So let's see what an alert does. I'm going to copy this over. I'm going to paste this into my HTML. All right, here's my button. Let's take a look at my button. And on my button here it is. We have another event listener on click, the same one as we saw for the H1. And this event listener says, I want you to alert hello. We haven't learned about what an alert does yet, but we see it's calling a function that we haven't created yet, right? We haven't created a function called alert. So how will this work? Well, you can see when I click the button, I have this pop up in the middle of top middle section of the screen here. It says hello and the OK button right here. All right, so here I am. Here's my pop up. I'm able to make it come up just with that function called alert, and then we write hello within the alert. So alert is a special inbuilt JavaScript function we can use to make that alert pop up in the middle of the screen. Do we see that there? So this is now a new type of inbuilt JavaScript function we're seeing here. It's an alert. So this should make something and a message appear at the top of the browser whenever we click something. Or it could be alert on a different event listener, a different type of event listener. It could be on hover or on mouse out. Okay, so right now it's just set to a click. Whenever I click this button, an alert should pop up. Right, so how well do we feel about this alert? This is an inbuilt JavaScript function. We can attach it to an event listener to make this pop-up show up on the screen. So this may be one of your JavaScript test questions, right? Make a button on the page that we're telling you to build to make an alert pop up. The only way, well, not the only way, but one way you could do that is by attaching this alert here in this event listener. We can also attach it another way, all right? So let me go ahead and comment this out. We'll just give this a label, callback function example. All right, let's just leave it on here so we can see that. But I'm going to work here and I'm going to say, I want this alert. I'm going to just rip it out of here and just paste it in my JavaScript. So now anytime the page loads, you see that alert pop up before the page itself loads. We don't want that though. We want it to be on the click, on the on click. So let's create a function here that we can wrap this alert in. So let's just call this function pop up. Let's just call it a pop up. Oh my gosh. All right. So I need this to close out. So let's create this function pop up. And then so let's say in this function pop up, all right, once we call it, so let's create it, function pop up. All right, so in this function, I'm going to move this alert inside this function. So I'm going to place it in there. And now I should see this function called, which is called pop-up, and it contains this alert hello. So I'm just calling it a new name. So on click, we're going to invoke a function called pop-up. It's going to look for this function here, and it's going to do what it says as soon as I click it. So then it's going to, I've just moved the alert to a specific function name. That's all I've done. So let's go ahead and see this now. Right, so if I click, I have the same result. I get the same pop-up there. Did you see that? Click, same thing. Same exact thing. The only thing now is I've moved that alert within the JavaScript instead of having it within here. Okay, just a slightly different way of doing it. You can have the alert stay within the HTML here, or you can allocate it to a function and then call that function name.
And then what does the number on top of the pop-up window mean?
The number is just related to the file path location. So for example, if I called this, if I showed this by saying, instead of open with live server, if I say copy path and I say paste it in here, if I click it, it will just say this page says.
Okay.
Right? This is just there because it's related to the live server. So that's a live server number. It will just change like that if you don't use the live server. Good question. Okay, so we've learned about the on-click event. We can make our page have a pop-up through the alert. We can write custom functions as I've been writing. So this one here is a custom function that will console log. What I want you guys to do every time you connect the JavaScript to the HTML is to test, like I did in the very beginning, through a console log. I want you to console log something to show me that you're properly connected. And this you can do before you start any project or assignment, or especially your test. You can create your 3 files, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and then link them through the CSS link here or the script link here, and then test that connection, right? So test your CSS connection by applying some rule that you can see a visible change. In this case, I just changed the color of my H1. In this case, I started off with the console log just so I can see that console log is showing up on my browser, so I know that it's properly connected, right? So I just inspected and viewed on the console. Well, I don't have it now. I commented it out, but I wanted to see hello world when I first started. All right. So this is the first step, and we've gone over the first step. So now let's move on to the keyword this. Keyword this. All right. So as we've already explained, now we're just going to go into it a little bit more in detail. This is going to act as an anchor. It's going to act as an anchor. It's going to attach whatever the word this is attached to. So let's look at this example here. Here we have 3 buttons. Here we have 3 buttons, and I'm able to use the anchor this to bring that element into our HTML. I mean, into our JavaScript, so that we can say element.innerText to change it to be from being on initially, because that's our default value, on, and then we're going to change it to be off. So let's go ahead and do that now. I'm going to copy from here, and I'm going to comment out everything I have so far. So let's comment out everything we've done so far. And then let's paste it in here. All right, so here's my 3 buttons. I'm going to format my document. So here's my 3 buttons. They all have the event listener listening for a function called turn off. And they have that anchor, this, in there. So it's going to bring in this whole element whenever I click in it. And we see the value as on, as the button's text. So let's just see what this looks like now. Okay, refresh this. Here's our 3 buttons. Let's increase the zoom percentage. All right, so here's my 3 buttons. 3 on buttons. Now, on these 3 buttons, what we're going to do is switch them to off. So we have this on click, this event listener, and we're calling this function turn off, and we're passing in this as an argument to be received by the parameter that's going to be attached to this function. So let's grab that function from the platform. Here it is. And let's paste it in there. All right, now we have a function turn off. It receives the element, so whatever element is clicked here, and we see it's the same function for all 3 buttons. So all 3 buttons are accessing the same function through the function's name. And they receive the element through this. And what we do with the element, okay? What we do with the element is say element.innerText. This is a way that we can access this element's inner text. So it's whatever text that we had written here initially. And then we're going to say the new value, remember, because one equal sign assigns a value, right? It's going to assign the value, and we're going to switch it to off. So let's see how this works now. If I click a button, did I properly link it here? Make sure that I linked it properly. And we should see element.innerText equal off. Oh, it's because I didn't increase the zoom here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, so now when I click it, there it is. Switch to off. Click it, switches to off for that specific element that it's attached to. Okay, when I click the second button, it doesn't switch them all to off. It's only going to act as, it's only going to be for the event listener for the button that we attach this to. So this is not going to be all the rest of the buttons, only the specific button it's hooked onto. Okay, so this here, this keyword is going to affect my third button if I click it by changing the element's inner text to off. Here's my third button, and there we go. We have 3 buttons now we can effectively use as switches. We can switch them from on to off, off to on. How do we switch them from off to on? How can we do this? Any recommendations? I'm sure we know how to do it. What did we learn in programming basics? One of the pillars of programming. We said for loops were one of them, and what was the other one?
If it's an if statement?
If statement, yeah, conditional, right? Because we want it to be conditional. If the button is off, then switch the inner text to be on. If it's on, then switch the inner text to be off. So let's go ahead and write that if statement. So we're going to write that if element dot inner text, and we're going to say 2 equal signs now because we're asking a question. If it's equal to off, right? If it's equal to off, then we'll take this here and we'll switch it to on. Likewise, right? What's the opposite of this scenario? Right? What's the only possibilities that we have so far? We have off and on, right? So if we have the element inner text to be off, then we switch it to on. And we're going to use an else here. Else, right? Because else covers every other possible situation. If it's not off, then it's on. So else element dot inner text equals to off. Okay. If it's off, then we switch it on. Otherwise, we switch it off. So let's see this now, how it works. I can click this button, switch it to off, and there we go. We switch it back on. Off, on, off, on, off, on. Here we see if the inner text is off, then the element.inner text is on. Otherwise, we switch it off. Just like the light switch in your room, right? When you go into the room, it's not written in English, right? It doesn't say off and on, but you read it. If the switch, if it's flicked up, then we know it's on, right? Flicked up means on, and flicked down means off. So if element.inner text would be off, right? If it's flicked down, then we flick it up. So then we switch it to on, right? If it's on, right? That's the case that else is covering, right? Because that's the opposite of the off. Else, if it's on, then we switch it to off, right? A light switch has 2 functionalities. All we're doing is creating a light switch now using our HTML and JavaScript that's connected to the DOM. So off, on, off, on, off, on. It's key that we understand how this works. Okay, so let's relaunch a poll so I know how well we're getting it. Okay, so all we're doing is taking that JavaScript functionality and applying it to our DOM. Sorry, was someone asking a question? Okay, no? All right. Feel free to interrupt me if you have a question, all right? Don't be shy, please. All right, so now we're able to switch elements in our page. It's inner text by saying element.inner text through the this keyword. So this here passes as an anchor. It's attaching itself to the element it's attached to. And then we're able to receive that element, change that element's inner text to whatever we have as a value here. Okay. In addition to changing the inner text, we can also remove it off the page completely. So what if we just change something to remove? Like, let's say we have an image of a ninja, right? So let's copy this image. Let's comment these light switches out. I'm going to just paste this image tag here. And here we're looking for a ninja PNG. So let's look for a ninja image. This guy's kind of cool. All right, so I'm gonna save image as, I think, what type of image is this? Let me just double check that this is like a good image. It's a JPG. Okay, that's good. So let me just drag it into my image folder. So here I have my folder. I'm going to create the images folder. I'm going to drag this guy in from my desktop here. There it is. I'm going to rename it to Ninja. Rename, right click, rename Ninja. And let's just make sure that we're accessing it correctly. So I'm going to delete what's in the src here, do /, hit enter for the images folder, hit enter again for that image that's in there, ninja.jpg. Let's just see that our image is there. Okay, so here's our image. It's pretty big. It's okay though. We have a big ninja image. Oh, it's because we're zoomed in so much. So let's make him a little smaller. There we are. Okay, here's our ninja. And what we want to do with this ninja image is to make him hide. So we have the on-click hide, and we're saying this. So this is an anchor to this whole image tag. And we want it to hide this. Okay, right now, when we click it, it doesn't do anything because hide is not a inbuilt JavaScript function. We need to create it. So let's grab it from here. Here we have it written for us already, hide, and it receives the element. So whatever this keyword is attached to. So we're going to receive that element, and then we're going to say with that element .remove. So let's copy this here. Get a little bit more space so we can see what we're doing. Okay, here we are. Let's comment this out. We only need to see this for now. Okay, so here we have our function. I'm looking at this here, this image. On click, we're going to make it hide this. So this is the anchor or hook for this whole entire element. So we're going to call this function hide. It's going to receive this. It's going to receive that keyword this that attaches the whole entire thing with it. Okay, so this keyword is attaching everything with it. Passes it into the element. Once we have that element, we can say .remove this here. Let's see what .remove does. If I click it now, there he goes. He's gone. He's gone. All right, let me read the chat here. He's saying that I have to always include the dot before the object, this dot attributes. Fontel, I'm not sure what your question is asking. Could you clarify that a little bit? Okay, it looks like
I
you're
thought
Earlier,
that I
we were
had
talking
in my
about,
previous. Huh?
Go
Oh, go
ahead.
ahead, Lucky.
Oh, yeah, I'll say when you were doing the dot intertext, I'll say that like there's some of the native attributes of the HTML tags and some of the stuff that you might add in the HTML like within the tag itself. So when you're doing like style or what else? Like some of the you can manipulate a lot of the things. You'll see this in some of the assignments like background color, font size, stuff like that. You can change those when you're writing your HTML code, but you can also manipulate all those things from the JavaScript side as well. So if you have an element, you can access a lot of those properties. Dot intertext is one of the ways of targeting a property of it. You can also manipulate things like style and background color and stuff like that. This in a similar way. If you look in the documentation, it'll show you like what dot attribute, like what dot property you need to target those specific like parts or attributes of the HTML text. That
Well
allows
said.
you a lot of dynamic control over the HTML.
Exactly. And that's a good segue to what we're going to go into next. Okay. So we can use that element to receive the this keyword and whatever it's attached to, and then use that dot notation, dot remove, dot something, dot intertext. All
That's
right.
what I was kind of referencing to.
Yes. So we
Okay.
get that element and then we say dot and then either remove or dot intertext equals something new. So we're accessing that element's values to that dot notation because it's an object, right? We're going to be playing more with objects tomorrow morning in our algo session. So we'll have a whole algo session devoted to objects tomorrow morning. Right now, we're learning that we can access an element's value by saying dot, and then in this case, remove. All right, so let's see what else we can do. Before I move on to the next type of DOM manipulation we can do, let's look at this assignment. We have button clicker. All right, so you'll have to create the layout. You have to create the foundation, which is the HTML, CSS. Once you've created everything, then you go back and add the JavaScript functionality. So create the view of this page first, and then go ahead and add the functionality. So for this one, we have it to be so when you click this like button, all that shows up is this alert here on the page. So we have this alert here. And so that should pop up. We know how to do that. I just did that for this lecture. And we also want to remove something. So when we click this button here, we want to remove the button. All right, so when you click the button, it should be an empty space, just like you see here. Okay, so we're just using what we've learned so far. Event listeners to make a pop-up show up on the screen and to make certain elements disappear off the screen. Okay, so this is one of our core assignments that we want to get done today. All right, so button clicker, that's here. You see that as the core assignment that we want to complete by the end of the day. And let's continue here. We have the hover event, right? And this, I know we're already covering a lot of information. We have a lot more to cover. So we'll do that this afternoon, in addition to the lab session that we're going to have. Okay, so let's look at on mouse over and on mouse out, and then we'll close it here. Okay, we have on mouse over and on mouse out. What can we do with this? Let's go ahead and copy this onto our page. So I'm going to comment out this ninja for now. I don't need him to be on the page. Let's comment out the functionality for this as well. All right, so here I have my div. It needs some CSS, so I'm going to copy this CSS, paste it in here. There it is. And I also want the functionality. So let's copy the functionality and paste it into our JavaScript. Let's take a look at it, what it does before we do it now. So here we have a div. And let's look at that div. Here it is. Here's my block. All right, you see it doing something already. So here's my block. And we have an event listener here that says, when you hover over this, okay, I want you to call this function over. Okay, it receives this element, but it doesn't actually do anything with it yet. Okay, it's just meant to receive this. So in fact, I can even delete this because nothing is done with this yet. So I'm just going to delete this so that we can see we don't need it. Okay, I can even remove it from the element because all I want this function to do is to show me an alert. Show me an alert. When I mouse over, I should see this alert mouse over. When I mouse out of this area, I should see an alert with the word mouse out. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to mouse over this gray block. And as soon as my mouse goes over the gray block, here's my pop-up, mouse over. And as soon as I had moved out, I'm already out of the area because I'm already clicking this pop-up. You see mouse out. That's what I wanted to pop up in my alert when I moused out. So here I mouse over. Yeah, I get the pop-up and I'm already out. So the next one's going to pop up as soon as I click OK. Mouse out. There it is. All right, let's do one last pulse check to understand how well we're understanding how mouse over and mouse out are another set of event listeners that we can use. Okay. All right. And while I can continue for another hour on this whole topic, we're going to separate this out so that we're not getting information overload. Okay, so we're going to put this into practice. What I want us to do now is, if we haven't started our button clicker assignment yet already, to take what we've learned in this lecture and apply it right away. Okay, that's the way to make this lecture stick in your brain. Take this information and go straight to applying it. So make this button, make a pop-up Ninja was liked. Make it so that when you click this add definition button, it disappears. And here you also have a practice assignment. Here's your practice assignment. We're going to learn how to make it a video play when we hover over it and stop playing when we mouse out of it. We can go to this website here where we can see different videos. We can download these MP4s for free and use them in this section here. All right, all this HTML and CSS is already created for you. You just need to add the JavaScript functionality so that when you mouse over, as you saw me use mouse over and mouse out here, instead of applying it on a div block, you're going to be applying it to the section that where you have your video, right? So there's plenty of tags here. We can use different functions. Instead of over and out, we can use the function named play and pause. And so here's a awesome practice assignment that will definitely help you on your exam. So your exam question, one of them may possibly be on mouse over and on mouse out of an image or a video to make it change or play in a certain way. So definitely want to work this practice assignment. Even though it's a practice assignment, I highly encourage you to do it. Okay, there's now a few more core assignments for the day, but we will go over them. We'll go over them later. So let's just focus on what we can do now. Let's apply the knowledge we've learned already and come back this afternoon. We'll talk about the rest of the way that we can control objects on our page through JavaScript. And then we're going to break out into some lab sessions. So let me take a look here, see the code review that we have for Monday. Okay, so we have a group of 3 people here on Monday. Because we have a demo session that I want us to do this afternoon, in addition to a lecture, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the 3 people here on Monday to Tuesday, if that's okay. So I'm going to just take these people here and I'm going to move it to Tuesday. Okay, didn't leave that block. What if I copy just this block here? Okay, so don't worry about what I'm doing, but there it is. We moved our group today on Monday to Tuesday. So let's save this afternoon. I'm going to block it off so you guys can't enter in there. But let's save this afternoon session for our demo, our DOM manipulation. So I'm going to copy this over here. Copy, paste. Oh, now my mace, it doesn't want to work, but I'll do it. I'll make this work. So we're not going to do code lab reviews today. We're just going to work on our demo today. And if we have extra time, then I'll see if I can drag you guys in. Okay. So we are working on DOM manipulation. It's super important that we have our thinking caps on for this week, especially today and tomorrow, to understand how to work the DOM so that we can pass our test. That's the finishing touch that we need to be able to pass our test. So you guys have the skills already. Once you're able to create something like profile page, you're at the HTML and CSS level to pass the test. Another way to test your HTML CSS skills is through the Dojo Weather practice assignment. I have that on the belt review exam tomorrow, but we want to complete the core assignments before we get to that. So Dojo Weather, and then there's also this one, likes. Okay, this is a core assignment. I made it for the due date to be tomorrow, but you want to be able to finish likes by the end of today. Okay, so this is the core assignment, likes. I'll go over how to make this work in the afternoon. I'm not going to do it for you, but I'll do some functionalities that you can apply to this assignment, so that you can understand and figure out how this works. Okay, so again, DOM manipulation is the theme of the day today and tomorrow. Okay, we've done a lot of CSS and HTML. We'll still go over how to do that and the basic rules for that, but DOM manipulation is what we're learning for the day. And so that ends this morning session. Do you guys have any questions related to the topic? I know there's a lot of stuff that we're covering, and we're going to go over it in even more detail this afternoon. But if you have any questions, feel free to ask me now. And then we'll go ahead and break out into groups. Okay, so no questions I see. Take that silence as a no questions. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and create the groups. I'll stop the recording.